Today on CityCast Denver, we're looking back at a big week of news with a first-time guest. We're talking about RTD ending slow zones, Governor Polis vetoing the big sexual harassment bill for some reason we'll talk about, and my favorite topic, the pandemonium in our streets. Plus, of course, wins and fails. Today is Friday, May 30th. I'm Paul Karolyi, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city where a person will look you dead in the eye while they don't pick up their dog's poop.
That happened to Paul.
Happened to me this week.
Paul locked eyes with a lady.
I clocked her from halfway down the block. The dog was pooping.
Paul gave her the judgmental stare.
Right in the eyes. I was like, what are you going to do? What are you about to do? And she does this move where she's got her hands in her hoodie pocket. She's like, I'm looking for my bag. I'm looking for the bag. There's no bag.
Use your hand.
We both knew. I mean, use something. Clean up the poop.
There's actually a nice little pile right here. I almost hit coming over here. Yeah. It's like a Harvey Milk issue. That was like the issue that won him.
Really?
Yeah. He said,
Is that true?
Yeah. You clean up the city's dog poop and you could be mayor. That was the time in the 70s in San Francisco.
What a smart entry though into getting people on your side.
Totally.
You hear that, aspiring politicians?
Oh my Lord.
No one's working on it. It could be you.
No.
I mean, we got one right here. Maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. I've been called a politician before.
All right, we're coming to you on video as we do on Fridays now from the beautiful Dude IDK studios here in 5 Points. Bree Davies is with me as usual.
Hi.
Hey, Bree.
Hey.
And we have a fantastic guest. He's the state representative for downtown Denver, all the way down to Ruby Hill and up to Globeville. Very interesting district. Lots of issues to deal with.
I didn't know you came all the way to my side of town on Ruby Hill. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Welcome to the show, Alex Valdez.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
Hey.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Alex, I want to talk to you about downtown because that's the news of the week. Really, the mayor's got this he's throwing a big party basically to celebrate reopening most of 16th Street. Still not all of it.
Still
Couldn't
almost
quite
there.
get the timing right.
Yeah.
Some things ran over.
The project that will not end.
Yeah. How are you feeling about the vibes downtown?
It's better than it was, but not as good as it should be. At the end of the day, I think we've come quite a ways from 2020, but I think we have a long way to go to kind of restore the vibes and kind of the services. I think when we talk about the mall, I'm glad that it's 16th Street.
Yes, be careful.
When it's done, we're really excited, but I think most people are noticing as they walk up and down, there's still a lot of vacancy that I think is probably the driving word that is defining downtown right now.
Yeah, we were talking about the Chili's that left.
Right.
How important that Chili's is.
Right.
So many of us.
Former chili head over here.
Current chili head, that weird queso dip with the little hamburger meat in it or whatever. It's delicious. But the fact is that's a huge gap because a lot of the folks that live downtown are young professionals. They can't afford fine dining. Maybe like me, they can't cook.
Well, a lot of those places are gone, not just Chili's. I mean, the Paramount Cafe left a long time ago, but that was the exact same kind of restaurant, right? A bar restaurant.
Right.
Pool tables, affordable hamburgers, nice patio, what you want on 16th.
Yeah, you want to get out of there for, $30 and feel full and, have a nice margarita in you.
30, good luck.
Yeah.
A bright blue.
It's called a
margarita.
Presidente margarita. I served many
of
those.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, we got a little bit of business before our top story. We are sitting down with the chief of police very soon, Ron Thomas, and we want to know what you think we should ask him about. If there's something that you want to hear the chief of police talk about and maybe get some hard follow-up questions from us, now's the time. Let us know what's important to you about the chief of police and the Denver Police Department right now.
I want to shout out, hey, Do Better Denver. I know you all are hate listening. Send us some questions for the chief of police. The crime is their big thing. What do you want us to ask them? You're also the door is always wide open to come on this show. We have tried many, many times to get you all to come on, but
please
if not, just send us some questions you want us to ask Ron Thomas.
Yeah, we know they don't respond to your tweets anymore. Yeah. But so we'd happily make the connection. We could be the interlocutor here.
That's what we're here for.
They should come. They should come
bridges.
Talk to you.
Why not?
It's
an interesting dialogue that they're having, and it's one that I think people are tuned into.
That's one way of putting it.
That is a way to put it.
Yeah,
but
whether
we
they
do,
like
but
it or
we
not
do
is-
want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's worth
it's
a
the
conversation.
perceptions versus reality, and a lot of that is happening downtown.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know who it is, do you?
No,
Okay.
I do not.
Nobody seems to know. I'm terrified it's someone I actually know in real life. It would really bum me out.
Well, you probably do know them. You know everyone.
Unfortunately, I do.
Well, the fact they're incognito means they might be somebody you least expect. You never know.
I know.
Could be someone
That's
special.
the scary part. Before we move on from downtown, though,
Yeah.
I just want to say that we were kind of wrong last week. We were kind of rough on the 16th Street Mall reopening. And then that DJ, that show.
Fisher?
Did you guys see footage of this show? There were thousands of people downtown.
It was incredible.
Downtown, I feel like this would be something you would say, Paul. I think downtown was back last weekend.
It looked hot. I was sad to
So-
miss the show. It was later in the day than I wasn't able to even stop by and see it. But
The crowds were huge. I
Yeah,
just
some
want
of
to
the
say,
video
I think
cam
I
was like-
underestimated that.
yeah, it looked like I've never seen. It didn't look like Denver. I've never
It
seen
did-
crowds like that
yeah.
on 16th Street.
Not even like protests or New Year's. Like it was wild. So
Yeah.
It's good to see
them.
people downtown.
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
at the end of the day, that's kind of why I've lived there for the past 20 some odd years, is that I like the buzz. I like the energy. I like having people around all the time. That appeals to me. And so the more of that we can get, the better.
Were you at the show?
No,
Did you hear it?
no, I was enjoying my vacation after I got out of session.
Out of
So
session, yeah.
I'm just getting caught up with all the fun that happened while I was gone. I got back and Memorial Day was a bit of a dreary one. So I'm still waiting to celebrate that maybe this weekend. Hopefully we'll get some sunshine, but,
I hope so.
but yeah, it's always good to see people returning to downtown for any reason.
Well, we'll catch everyone up with a little bit of news. The number to call for the DPD questions hotline.
Oh, yes.
Actually, I probably shouldn't call it the DPD hotline. That seems
No.
like something else. 720-500-5418. Leave us your questions, your texts for Chief of Police Ron Thomas. All right. Our top story, like I said, my favorite story, the pandemonium in our streets. There are a few developments we're going to talk about, but the big news is good news. The slow zones that RTD has imposed on light rail lines for almost a year are over. Good
Yay.
job. Good job,
Yay.
RTD. You get your flowers. But then we don't get to talk about good news for RTD alive. This is good news.
Yeah.
It
Good.
is good. It just feels like, okay, yes.
The question is, are people going to come back? I mean, it's like having a car that doesn't work right for a while. You're probably going to get a new car, a new method of transportation, right?
Habits change very quickly.
They sure do, especially when those habits get you to work or get you to wherever you need to be on time. You really have to have something dependable.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I talked to someone just last week who said I used to ride the E-line every day, and when the slow zone started, I bought myself an electric scooter, and
Yeah.
that's how I got to work.
Right.
And now he likes his electric scooter, and he's just going to ride that.
My big question was, with the system shut down for the better part of COVID, why wasn't the repair work done at a time when people were locked down?
Yeah.
When it would have made a lot of sense because it's outdoor work to go ahead and replace the track systems before people return to downtown. But it was almost immediately when we started to see the recovery that they shut the entire downtown system down for rail replacement, which it was ill-timed because that was the time when we really needed the system at its best to bring people back. And it really closed downtown completely for the better part of 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is, and it's part of RTD's problem in general. The people that absolutely rely on it will always use it. Everybody else, if it's a choice that you make, there's still seems to be not enough an incentive to get people back on it.
Well, here are the numbers. I mean, the numbers are really glaring. Before the pandemic, we were looking at just over 100 million rides per year across the system. Now, it had been coming back. It dropped to like 50 million. In 2020, 2021. It had been coming back, but in 2024, it stopped going back up again. It was plateaued. And a lot of people are saying because of these slow zones, but we're still at about 60% of pre-pandemic levels. And it's unclear whether or not people are going to get back on these trains and buses.
I think when I go to other cities and I use public transportation quite a bit, I always come back here and one thing really stands out to me. This is the only non-access controlled public transportation system that I use.
What does that mean?
Usually you have to pay and go through a gate or a turnstile to have access to the platform to get on the train. And what we have here in Colorado is just anybody can get on, and you may randomly be fare checked. that doesn't make any sense from a revenue perspective, but it also doesn't prevent those who shouldn't be gaining access to public transportation from getting on. And so I think that's an easy step that would bring us in line with pretty much every other city in the world that would also make the quality of life better for the drivers, which they always have shortages filling, and obviously make customers feel safer because somebody who's paying a fare to get on the public transportation is probably going somewhere.
Well, we'll talk about the drivers, but you're talking about revenue. The revenue from fares, very small percentage of RTD's overall budget. Most of it comes from you all, the state government. So that's the question for you. Why isn't more money coming from the state?
Well, the state's broke. I think that's the easiest answer. We, of course, could bring up and talk about Tabor, but that's a topic for another day. But the fact is that Colorado just does not have the money to do those sorts of things on the state level. And you compound that with the current situation, which I believe is just beginning with the economy. And we've already had to cut a significant portion of our budget. And given the regime's changes recently, I'm expecting to probably be called back to the Capitol to make further cuts at some point during the spring or the summer or the fall. And so we just don't have the money. All we have is the regulatory power.
I feel like there's priorities issues here, though, because Colorado loves highways. I mean, we do. Living through the I-70 expansion, which felt like something that would have happened in the 60s, and we're still doing it. So I think that's part of the issue, too, is just like, what do we prioritize as a state?
Right.
I would say public transit's pretty low down on there. And Alex, you grew up here too.
Yeah.
I think the perceptions around who rides public transit, it's not the same. To me, it's just not the same as like in New York or in Washington, D.C., where like everyone rides because that's, it's more like I have to ride because I don't have a car.
Yeah, I mean, you hear stories constantly about like, oh, I sat next to Timothy Chalamet on the subway.
Yeah.
In Denver.
Oh, I saw.
Has anyone ever heard a story about like, oh, I sat next to Nikola Jokic on the light rail? Like that's unthinkable.
Right.
It's a regional system that in its design is meant to bring people to work, and it brings people downtown. Since Denver's not a city that's really a tourist attraction city, the system was really designed with all points focused on downtown. So here we go. We're all the way back to downtown. Here we go. But the thing is that's the design of the system. And right now, the society has changed somewhat. That system needs to change somewhat. But when it comes to where we're spending the money, I've always been a proponent of electrifying automobiles and sticking with what people already kind of know and like. But I think there is still a place for public transportation, especially for downtown, where it is usable, where it is kind of New York. Like I can walk a block in any direction and catch public transportation anywhere. But I don't think the rest of the city has that. And in New York, you're never too far from getting on a train.
Well, and again, I think it's just not, there's a lot of young people that rely on it. My brother used to take it to school from Virginia Village to PS1, which was a charter school that turned into a co-working space and no longer exists. But he was riding the bus at, 15 to go to school. I know, what a Denver story. But again, the car culture here is you grow up to rely on cars and which of your friends has a car. And then, I don't know. I rarely took the bus except for when my cousin got grounded and he wasn't allowed to drive us to school.
I like my car. I drive an electric car. I don't feel really guilty
What
about
brand?
it. That's a Nissan.
Okay.
It was really cheap lease.
I mean, that's not
I'm
the
a
one
public
people are
servant.
mad about.
Oh yeah, no, I don't have one of those.
But aren't those, I remember I feel like Nate Miner told us they're really heavy. They're really, really, really hard on the roads.
They are. Well, the Cybertruck is especially, and I have to admit, when it came out, I was really intrigued by it. I'm an '80s kid. I love the DeLorean.
This is how my
and to me,
wife
it looked
feels.
like a DeLorean on stilts. So I'm still looking at it like I want to hate it. I definitely hate the guy who makes it. But I may have to buy one dirt cheap used someday and hide it in the back. And
you
then
and my
when it-
3-year-old.
Oh,
He could clock a Cybertruck a block. He's like, Cybertruck.
They're so cool if you're an 80s kid, but they're just, obviously, Musk is just kind of blown it with his brand there.
But I think I don't know. I love my car too, but I had that experience of living in New York and relying on something else. And it did change everything I thought about transit because of the accessibility. It was right outside my door because of all the other things I could do when I wasn't driving. I read more books than I ever read in my whole life in the year I lived in New York City, meeting up with my friends that lived in Spanish Harlem versus when I was working down in Soho. Like, it just changed everything. And I never had that experience in Denver. And I came back and I was like, I'm not going to have a car. Are you kidding me? I got a car like within a month of coming back home.
It's our system is not as big.
We got to move on. We got to move on. There's a really hot topic here we got to talk about because people have been asking us to talk about this, and I want to get into it with you too. Last Friday, Governor Polis vetoed a bill that would have required Uber and Lyft to add background check requirements and requirements for audio and visual recording to protect riders from sexual assault. This is a big discussion at the state capitol. A lot of people rely on these services. Bree, were you surprised by this veto?
Kind of. I mean, often I feel like the sexual assault conversation comes down to like how it's ever personally affected you. And I think so many women have horrifying stories that's just part of your everyday life. And I'm not saying like Governor Polis has never been in a position like that, but like, I just wonder, like, how do you not think about what that message is that you're sending when you don't want to make things safer for people? And the background checks thing seems so easy. Why are we at least not doing that? That one man who's, I think he's in jail, he assaulted like 6 different passengers. How did we get here? And so, yeah, I don't know. I was disappointed and kind of not surprised, not to be like, oh, a dude did this, but I don't know. I don't feel like he was listening.
Yeah, I felt like, I mean, reading all the coverage, that was my takeaway as well. It was like, it seemed like everyone really would have liked to come to some kind of compromise on regulations here. That's what I took from his veto message, but that he ran out of time, or he didn't like the particular bill. He thought it would be too onerous on these companies, which that's not surprising. As unpopular as they are, they really do provide an important service that a lot of people rely on, and they provide a lot of jobs. I mean, how many? But
at the cost of what? Like, why can't we? That was kind of the argument, I think, of the legislators, especially the fact that a legislator had to come forward and be like, "Hi, I was assaulted by my rideshare driver. That's why this is important to me."
Well, that was another problem I had trying to research this. Was like, I actually can't tell what the data is. I looked at the Lyft and Uber, they're self-reporting because that's what they do, because they're not RTD. They're not required to report properly. As obscure.
Self-reported data in any data set is always questionable.
It's terrible. And they haven't even been doing it. They did it from like 2017 to 2019. The other one did it to 2020. It's all very up and down, unclear, but they haven't done it since the pandemic. So we don't know how big the problem is. And then from there, how do you compare sexual assault that happens inside of Ubers and Lyfts to other places? Is it a particular problem in these spaces?
Well, these companies have structured themselves in such a way where they kind of shield themselves from the liability that would make a normal company say, we're going to take care of this because we keep being sued for our negligence and losing. And the way that they've structured it, which, I think is very questionable, is that they treat drivers if they're independents, right? They call themselves technology platform, but really what they do is they inspect folks' cars and they do all this stuff. And I think it's really a matter of making sure that these companies are structured accurately to be responsible for these folks. And I think that's the fight you saw in California with whether or not these drivers were employees or how they were treated. And ultimately, that's kind of the federal government's place to step in and say, these folks need to be treated the same way as we treat taxi drivers. That's the great unfairness of this, is that you go to other cities, they all have a thriving taxi system. We allowed ours to be undercut from a regulatory perspective. These people were licensed, they were commercially licensed. There was a lot to it, and we replaced it with someone from somewhere who is an independent contractor. And that is not safe inherently. But what
also, generally speaking, as an employee or independent contractor, it's not always for the best for that person. I mean, you don't have protections, you don't have insurance, you don't have support. And I will just say, for the record, the 2 friends I have that are Uber drivers are women. So I'd be interested to hear what they think about this. But I think there just can be safety and.
I was on the Uber drivers subreddit last night looking at like what people in Colorado are talking about. Apparently there's been a big drop in the rates that they get paid lately. Because that's another thing that they deal with, is because it's a market on the customer side, is like there's flex pricing to pay for a ride, but it's also for the drivers, because they're not employees. They're not getting paid a monthly wage. They're getting paid per ride, and they get paid based on their demand for their services. And that seems to be very unreliable as well and unfair.
I think it's just another factor in, what kind of free money people have to spend. I'd like to take an Uber everywhere. In fact, when it was newer, I used Lyft. I didn't have a car. That was the only time I didn't have a car. And they had a pass, and it was a fixed rate. And it was really a great thing. And now the cost of a ride has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And I think that really has more to do with the fact that Lyft and Uber have posted massive losses since their inception. They're trying to find a way to actually make their business profitable, but it's going to be tough. You get somebody, hooked on a service at a certain price point, and then you jack it up. They're gonna
That's
not
like the oldest trick in the book.
right.
It's the
Yeah.
original sin. I mean, they had venture capital backing. They flooded the zone. They undercut the market. They took over all of our streets and all of our transportation. They made themselves dependent. They made us dependent on them. And now there's nothing we can do about it. It sounds like we can't even pass a sexual assault protection law to stop people from getting attacked in these cars.
To me, the original sin was allowing our actual regulated and structured and safe taxi system to be gutted by these companies instead of forcing them to follow those regulatory schemes from the very get-go. There are a lot of cities in the world that do not have Uber because they do not conform to the rules and standards they set up. On my vacation here, I was in Asia. Not once did I ride in Uber. I rode in taxis. And every single taxi driver was licensed, had a badge. It's kind of the taxi thing. I haven't ridden a taxi in a long time. But I think we could do more to bolster that industry again, to return that industry to that place, and where people are actually paid. They may be part of a union. Taxis traditionally, taxi drivers have been unionized, so there's a great deal of opportunity. I think in our desire to stay cool and current, we really opened the floodgates to the transportation network companies early, and we did not back away before we destroyed the infrastructure that we already had, which was our taxi system, which had its flaws, but was certainly safer from the rider perspective.
Well, speaking of safety and the whole transportation network, there's another piece that I want to talk about. There's a bill that you co-sponsored this session that I had not heard about, didn't get a lot of press coverage, but it was about a topic that we have talked about a lot, which is driver safety on RTD. I mean, there was that famous Washington Post profile of the bus driver on the 15 back during like 2020, 2021. It was just harrowing. Really changed my mind about how I think about RTD. Can you talk about this bill and what's happened with it?
Yeah. So we know this problem of public safety perception exists in our public transportation system, and it's not just passengers who feel that way. The drivers, the operators feel very unsafe as well, because again, it is them left to deal with whatever violent or drug situation that's happening on their train. And so they came to us, specifically members of the union that are the operators, and said, is there something we can do? Because in states like New York and a few other states, they've made this a felony. And as somebody who is a pilot and went to pilot school, I know that if you were to just get on a United Airlines plane and walk in the cockpit and slug the pilot, you're going to go to prison for a significant amount of time, federal prison. So we're looking for ways to let people know that it is not okay to assault the driver of a tens of thousands of pound vehicle full of people while they are in the process of operating their vehicles. So it seemed like something that should be easy, but we were met with kind of that same thing that I think has driven us generally from a criminal justice perspective a little too far, which is we can't really make anybody accountable for anything because we don't know the reason they did it. We don't know the foundational issues that really created it. And that just puts a stop on being able to move forward with what I think should be a much stronger penalty for assaulting a driver.
Well, I mean, I tend to lean that way too. I don't love the idea of more opportunities to put folks into the carceral system. What I'm thinking about though is this just feels like an issue of staffing. Like, why doesn't RTD have enough? Why are we not giving them enough funding to have somebody else on the train who's not the driver, or on the bus who's not the driver, who's, wandering, like providing that security? Because I can't imagine being in charge of driving a bus and being, my uncle was a bus driver here in the 90s, and he definitely had to ward off people assaulting him. Like, to me, it's a budgetary issue. Like, we just need more eyes and more people to take care of that stuff so the driver can focus on driving this huge vehicle.
Just to be specific about what your bill does, and it's awaiting Polis's signature. We don't know what he's going to do, but it says it would make it a class 1 misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to a year in jail or a $1,000 fine to repeatedly insult, taunt, challenge, or make communication in an offensively coarse language to another in a manner likely to provoke a violent or disorderly response on a bus or light rail train. I'm going to be honest, I could see how some people would say that seems a little excessive. Like we've all seen people who are having a bad day on a bus. Like if I'm yelling at a bus driver, maybe I'm having a horrible day and a year in prison?
Well, there's accountability for our actions. And I think that's, generally where we have these differing opinions is I believe in personal responsibility and that individuals are accountable for the actions that they take. If you verbally assaulted flight crew, that you would also be arrested and jailed. So I don't want to see people go to jail, but I also don't want to see a system where we think personal accountability doesn't matter and it's somebody else's job to police their behavior. That's not really the way it works. The way it works is you are responsible for you. And this goes back to the whole access control thing. That's a basic thing that would absolutely prevent a lot of this. But regardless of your feelings about the leadership at RTD, it's something that they just don't seem to want to do. And so they place a random security officer on random trains who does not enforce any rules. It's not going to work that way. It needs something else. And I do believe people need to be personally accountable for not so much verbal, but we know when somebody goes to the court, they're not going to go to jail for a verbal assault. That they rarely go to jail for a physical assault. So I don't see that risk there, especially not in our criminal justice environment. What I see is an opportunity to get more drivers, to create more reliability within the system, and to let people know that we have their back and that we're not just having the back of the person having the crisis, which seems to be kind of a theme that we always really take it to the extreme in who we're trying to defend, and we're kind of leaving the middle and the masses who are saying, I don't feel safe. We're just ignoring that to some degree.
I wonder about that. And you did get the support of the union on that. I didn't see a lot of opposition to this bill. Is Polis going to sign it? Have you talked to him about it?
No, but I'm sure he will. I mean, usually if he has a problem, and that's the one thing I'll say, Governor Polis is very transparent. He is not somebody who you're surprised by his actions. He tells you exactly why he's not going to sign a bill if he's not going to sign it. If he doesn't make any signal, that's usually a good sign. And if you check it with him and there's no signal, you're going to get signed. So he's a very transparent governor. And so, going back to the previous topic, he usually makes his, I guess you would call them demands because he is the governor. He makes them clear. And we have an opportunity to either say, I'm pushing forward and kind of challenging you, or I will do what it takes to get my bill signed. And in this case, it's a misdemeanor. It's probably not going to draw much ire from anybody outside of the Judiciary Committee in the House.
Okay. Well, we will post a link in the show notes to Polis's explanation of his Uber Lyft veto. He had a lot of reasons why he said he was vetoing it. You should check those out. But right now we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about another piece of pandemonium in our streets: ambulances.
And hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
All right, we're back. Our hot topic today: really excellent article, really good reporting from Denverite. As usual, Kevin Beatty, one of the best. He published a just fascinating story this week about a ride-along he did for a shift with a Denver Health ambulance crew, and just what they saw, what they experienced, what they went through. So, I mean, we all read it. I thought this was one of those great stories that just connected the dots between a lot of the issues we talk about in silos. And I don't know. What did you all think? Just big picture.
It was a very interesting article. I think it's something that if you've lived downtown, because you see the Denver Health ambulance arrive at pretty much any situation that's going on. So that those people, first of all, they're angels for doing it. It is a very difficult job. I'm sure it's very exciting. But the people who do it are special. And when I think about the issue and when I read the article, I liked the article, and I liked that they were talking about getting to the hot dog stand to get
Billy's
a hot dog.
Gourmet dogs.
Trying to eat.
Dog.
By the way, I just want you
Just
to know,
lunch.
most emergency workers, this is their day to day. Is I just don't have time to eat,
right?
Or go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, it's very busy, and I think like what you're reading there is it acts as a safety net system. and this is a huge issue, right? What, you know, when it's mental health crisis or whatever it is, there was a piece in the article where a man had gotten basically chain whipped, and the person was probably, or seemed to obviously, based on the article, be having a mental crisis. The question for us all should be, why is that person not being treated? Why do the pictures in that article show people in hospital gowns? Yeah. What kind of system do we have where we release people who are sick? That's the problem. That's the core problem. And these folks go back to the sick person and bring them back to where they need to be. And it's not going to work if they continue to be released in a situation where they are not stabilized and not well.
Bree, should we get into the article? Any big picture thoughts?
I mean, my sister's a paramedic. My mother is a emergency room nurse, has been one for 51 years. So they're on both sides of this, right? They're releasing. They don't have anywhere to send these folks, I think, is part of the problem. Like you're talking about, there was a gentleman in the story who had clearly been in the hospital. I think it was for frostbite, had to have some toes surgically removed. I've had a lot of surgeries. Post-surgery, you need to be in a safe, clean environment where someone else is helping you take care of those wounds and things like that. That gentleman clearly didn't have any of that, so that's where the paramedics step in. And I asked my sister, I was like, how did you feel about this article? These are your colleagues. She said it was incredibly accurate. I felt like it was very, it was truthful to our everyday experience. And it was really like, it was nice to see somebody show what we actually do every day. The guy that stuck out to me was the alcoholic that just calls them twice a week. And my sister said, absolutely. I've got regulars. Absolutely. There's a transitional housing building at the end of my block. There's an ambulance there probably 4 or 5 times a week. And my sister said, a lot of these folks are just lifetime trauma survivors that don't have any sort of safety net, that don't have the skills to, or even like they didn't go to the doctor when they were kids. They maybe don't have insurance. Like they didn't even have an experience to understand how healthcare could work or have access to it. So who becomes that access? Paramedics. And she said, the thing that she sees the most is like, this is where we need to fund social workers and housing and mental health services, so that she's like, we don't mind doing it, but we're seeing what the problem is firsthand every day, which is we've got a lot of folks falling through the cracks, and who takes care of them? Paramedics, and then the emergency room people.
There was an interesting book a few years ago that I read. It was called San Francisco, which was just of this narrative on what's going on in big cities. Yeah. The most interesting thing that I took from that book was that we had a system, you know, and that the idea of holding people was rejected, and that's why our system really went away. But we did have a system,
holding people without their consent, I think, was the thing that got people to stop doing that.
Exactly. It was the question of, should society step in and help this person, or should they, you know, turn them out on the street and let them fend for themselves? And I think when you combined, you know, the Reaganomics with kind of the ideology of my side that was like, you shouldn't hold people without their permission, we lost our entire system. Rebuilding that system today is going to be almost impossible. So it's really going to be a hard thing to get ahead of, but you really do just have to say about the paramedics, they are angels. They're special people. God bless your sister and all of the people who do that work, because politics is tough, but it is nothing compared to what those people see by lunchtime.
My sister had a patient die her first day.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
In front of her. It was really traumatic. But she was like, you know, she's like, luckily we have therapists. We talk about therapy. You know, 20 years ago, it might have been a little bit different. So there's a process for it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect me or it doesn't make me, feel certain ways. But it is a calling. Absolutely. I couldn't do that I couldn't do what my mom and my sister do for a whole day. But I loved this story because it told that story, which is the people that are helping the folks are like, hey, there's some real basic stuff that needs to be helped and taken care of. This would make our jobs a lot easier. And also just like, take us out of the equation a little bit. I think police officers deal with this a little bit too. Like, this is where I do have empathy for police officers, is like, they're not trained in mental health crisis prevention or intervention. They don't have the skills to do that. And they're often called because this is the only number people have. And that's what my sister said too, is people don't know who else to call. So they just call 911.
I've been in that situation for sure, where there's someone who's like on the street. Maybe they're passed out, maybe they're asleep, or like they're, in distress, and I've had the urge to want to help, and I've been like,
But,
well, I
what do
don't
you
even
do?
know what to, who do I call? Do I call 911? It's like, there's no one.
Right. Do I want to be,
What do I,
do I want to bring the police to this situation? I don't know.
Yeah.
And my sister said one of the biggest things people could do is just stop calling the police when you think there's a homeless person existing around you. She's like, we get so many calls and it's just homeless person in my area. Like, just maybe leave them be for a little while and let them, if it does seem like they're actually needing medical attention, cool. Otherwise, just like let them be.
I think we've always believed that there was a need for a third interventionary force. You have the police,
Right,
who exist for law enforcement. You have the paramedics who are there to help somebody with their physical health situation, but there needs to be some kind of in between. And we talk about STAR and some of the other things that we've tried to get there, but I think that needs to be prioritized, and that Denver could be innovative and have the first kind of hybrid system where people could call with those concerns and be met with somebody who is trained in mental health services, who is trained as law enforcement if the situation gets out of control, and who has the ability to call a paramedic if there is a physical intervention needed. And I think that could be the kind of innovation. That's the kind of innovation that made Denver cool before, and it can make us cool again, is saying we see our issues and we're going to change the paradigm by which we explore them. There are a lot of Denverites who are saying, they're a little dissatisfied with the public safety apparatus. Well, that's a great opportunity to make change. And so
we
I
keep
would like to
hearing
see
about
that.
it. We keep hearing about STAR. It seems like everyone loves STAR. During the last mayoral election, a year and a half ago, every candidate was like, STAR. I love STAR. I actually started STAR. Like half of them were like, I'm responsible for STAR. Everyone loves STAR. Like this is what I keep telling people is like, and I wish we had the resources to do this, but we are so due for a proper investigation into the effectiveness of that program, because if it is time to invest more resources or less resources, if it's not going well, like if we're all talking about how much we like it, let's really take it seriously and take a hard look at how it's going
And take it to the next level where it's
maybe,
not only,
I mean, if it's not working, maybe we cut it. But
yeah, true. But
it may just because they're underfunded too. I mean, I love the idea of thinking of it at a level: police, fire, paramedics, co-responder, or mental health support. But you're right, Paul. I mean, it would help to have numbers, to be able to look at success or failure, or like who's calling it, how's it working? Because I think a lot of it is like it's only a certain times of day, it's only certain neighborhoods they serve. Like it's not something that people could even be in the habit of calling like a 511 or something.
It needs a PR effort, like you said. There needs to be signs downtown that say if you see somebody in crisis or you're concerned, call STAR, whatever. Yeah, exactly. And you'll be connected with somebody who can tell you, oh no, this is okay, this is normal for our city, or we'll dispatch somebody to help this person, to really provide them with some help. So that's the kind of cool innovation, which I think coming back again to downtown, which is my greatest love, that's the kind of thing that could really change the paradigm. Presence matters too. Just having some STAR folks that are assigned to certain areas to make relationships with folks, so they're trusted, and that person will be like, get my STAR person, I need my STAR person. To me, that's a start. And then, long term, looking at, do we need to build a mental health hospital in Denver? Because the one in Pueblo is full, and it continues to be full. So we need that. We actually need to spend, we're talking about a stadium, but we need to be spending money on a mental health hospital. I mean, hello.
What a concept.
The women's soccer stadium you're talking about?
Yeah.
Where are you at on that? Yes or no to $70 million in public money for the stadium?
Hell no. I think it's a ridiculous concept at a time when the city is laying people off, when the people is talking about furloughs. It's daft. And the location of it is also silly, given downtown is a crisis. It needs something. Put the stadium downtown or something, at least, if you're going to do it. But no, it's a terrible idea at this time. I think it would be great. It would have been a great conversation in 2017. I think that would have been the time to do it. But right now, you really can't make the case for that kind of expenditure when you're cutting jobs, cutting people's pay, which the city of Denver is doing, and not meeting the needs of the citizens, quite frankly.
All right. So there's one more piece before we move on from the Denver Health and the ambulance story. There's one piece that I really wanted to ask you about, Alex, which is just the demand, it seems to be going up for these services. A Denver Health spokesperson told Kevin at Denverite that ambulance calls are going up 3% per year. And the spokesperson says, I think we have challenges with growth outpacing resources. And that's not just a Denver Health problem. That's public safety across the board. Their question is, how do we manage our available resources responsibly enough to keep up with that demand? So my question to you, though, is, are you more worried about the hospitals who can't get the resources they need, or are you more worried about why the demand is rising in the first place?
I think the demand rising is part of our times. I mean, we're living in a time where we have an undemocratic regime in Washington. We're in a very scary time. So I think people's health is probably suffering to some degree. I mean, if you look at the growth numbers for Denver, they're not really there. Denver is actually decreasing in size a little bit. The thing about this safety net hospital, Denver Health, the thing about this is that it's inherently not fair, because what it does is it shoulders on the city of Denver residents the care of the entire metro area's indigent population. The Dr. Cog government. So I went to Seattle and I looked into this. I went on an expedition to look into this. They have an intergovernmental agreement on indigent care where, families go here, single folks go over here, people in mental crisis go here. They share the costs. We will never keep up with this problem if we don't hold Aurora, Littleton, Centennial, Thornton, all the cities who send people to Denver for care on our dime. Until they pitch in, and then we wouldn't be talking about budget shortfalls. We wouldn't talk about meeting the need. We could meet the need even if it is growing, and I'm sure over the next 4 years that it's going to grow exponentially, given that they're providing that safety net service, right? And we're not seeing like an increase in people probably getting hurt. We're probably seeing an increase in those calls dealing with those other things. I don't know that for sure, but it seems to me that more Dr. Cog, which is our regional government group, they need to participate more financially in making that program successful. And the people of Denver are benevolent for funding it on their own and for sending more money their way in our last ballot. So I'm proud to be a Denverite. I'm proud of what we do, but I've always looked at Denver Health as Denver somewhat being taken advantage of by the rest of the metro area and really not doing their part to help Denver Health be able to keep up with that growth.
Bree, any last thoughts on the ambulance, the Billy's hot dogs?
I think that the paramedics are telling us part of the solution to this is the systemic issues that people are having is like a lot of this could probably be solved if folks were housed. Yeah. Those calls that they're getting are like things that maybe somebody in your life could help you take care of if you had that safety net around you or just somewhere safe to go. And I think that's part of this ongoing conversation of like, what do we do? How do we fix this problem in Denver? How do we fix this problem? Like, we just got to be able to figure out how to house people more affordably.
And I've always thought that there's a missing link in assisted living. So they have assisted living for seniors, and it's great. I think there's a place for assisted living for folks that experience ongoing crisis.
Sure.
And having a social worker that's right there that they can just go to, or that the social worker can get them immediately, and that they feel safe where they're at. So I think that there's a model of hospitalization, which we've decided we don't like so much. And then there's kind of that middle, which is just empty. And then there's, the market where you go to get housing. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for assisted living for folks that kind of turn.
Supportive housing. Cause I do want to say like the reason we moved away from that institutions, there's a lot of reasons we moved away from it, but a disability activist worked really hard to get folks out of institutions who shouldn't have been there in the first place. And Denver's the home to the first independent living housing for people with disabilities, Atlantis. Like more of that. Yeah. More of that, because the intersection too of unhoused folks and disabled folks is huge. And these are folks that are being served by, again, the paramedics instead of being in a place where they can live independently but have that wraparound services. So it's a big conversation. But also I just want to say at the very end, where do we get that money? Where do we get that money? I don't know. We could find $800 million to build some horse stables.
Or taxing rich people a little more.
Or maybe,
I mean, that's kind of what we all agree that needs to be done.
Money seems to be fine when people, the will is there to find it. But
yes, I think it really is a question of, what how can we innovate in this space? And you said Denver did it first. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it
Absolutely.
bigger. Let's do it however we want to be a model for other cities to look at. And I think that's the thing. That's the light that seems to be dimming, at least in a lot of people's eyes, is that instead of being a leader, we're more
Just
being defined by our problems.
Draggling behind. Yeah.
Right. We're being defined by our problems. And when I go travel to, legislative conferences, most people, when I say I'm from Denver, and they say, what happened? Because it was,
Really?
everyone loved Denver. They just
It was
wanted
hot.
to come here. They wanted to
2010s.
party downtown. They wanted to go to the 16th Street. And they wanted to have, mall. They want to go to the mall, have fun. But I think that we need to have downtown be reborn with some new things. And I think renaming the streets great, but redefining what's going to be there, because retail is obviously, Amazonized and, online a lot.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we won't go there. But like, there is something that people come to Denver for. There are things, and whether you like it or not, I've always thought, why don't we have a public cannabis consumption area downtown?
This was one of my big ideas. I pitched this.
Huge idea, and then have a live music section,
Yes.
and then have a family section with like the
Yeah,
arcades and the fun stuff. I think it
Telling
needs
you,
more
just a
definition.
playground with a bathroom.
Yeah,
This would be the most popular city for families to go to. It's the thing we're always looking for.
it could also use $70
all right.
million investment.
All right, we got to move on. I got to say, just huge win to Kevin Beatty, win of the week. But we're
Great-
going to
great
do all
story.
our other wins in the week after this one short break. All right, we're back. Time for the best way to end the week: wins and fails, aka Rocky Mountain highs and lows. We each brought a recent local something. One we think is a win, one we think is a fail, and we're going to talk about them. Fails. I will start.
Go for it.
I'm going to start. Patty Calhoun from Westward and I talked about this earlier this week, but I'm going to talk about it again because I've been biking around downtown and I saw this for myself and I did not like it. Dottie, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure removed bike lane flex posts and bollards on this protected bike lane on Market and Blake Street. And so here's the quote that is like quite telling of where the mayor's priorities are. Dottie spokesperson Nancy Kuhn said, "The city is ditching flex posts to give that downtown area a better look and to make sure pedestrians can see into store windows from across the street. Zippers are also easier to fix, remove, and replace, blah, 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 blah. It's a better look. It's about helping
those bollards
retail."
are 10 feet tall?
Also, is like a biker with like blood smeared on their face. Like, is that a good look? Like, I don't think so.
Paul, this goes back to the conversation that we had months ago about, is this city amenable to pedestrian-friendly infrastructure at all? And again, we are proving that we are not. We don't want people to, what are they? They're like replacing them with little
There's
bumps.
little like bumps.
Those like the flex posts. I talked about this. I watched somebody park on those on Larimer Street. They just parked on top of them. They don't give a shit.
They're better. They're better than the bumps, though. They're better than the
that's what I'm
bumps.
saying.
We'll
It's
take
like,
'em.
but like, if that's how they treat the flex posts, they're not even going to notice the bumps.
I think
Crazy.
that I would have understood it if they said we're removing them so we can plow. That would have made sense because
Please.
they'd
that's
say we need to
something.
get a snow plow there. We need to make sure those lanes are clear so people aren't falling down on scooters and cracking their heads open. But the whole point is to provide safety. So if there's not some sort of a continuous curb that would rebound a car back, because oftentimes someone's not trying to run somebody over, they just drop their phone, they go to pick it up, and next thing they know, they're on top of a person in on the sidewalk. That there needs to be some sort of a raised thing that will redirect a tire,
But I
in
feel
order
like
for it to be safe.
we're moving backwards.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of people don't like bike lanes. I hear about it a lot. They hate them unless you use them. And I do use them. And I have my gripes about the 15th Street bike lane, just kind of like dead ending into a hellacious,
The worst
traffic scape
spot.
Right.
The worst.
The worst. It needs to go. If anyone's listening at Dottie, it needs to go all the way to Confluence Park on
Yes.
15th. But yeah, I think that, if it's not providing safety, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like they don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Well, it's not what the mayor wants. He doesn't like the bike lanes so much. One of you two should go. Give us a fail. Bree, do you want to go?
More reported cases of measles popped up. Children under 5. This is parental responsibility. I have a child. I got my kid in a couple weeks early to his 4-year appointment because I was so neurotic about getting that second measles shot. Please, for the love of God, vaccinate your kids. This is like 2025. We could take care. These kids don't have it's our responsibility as adults to take care of children. The fact that people are not doing this is endangering other children. It's endangering folks with disabilities. It's endangering immunocompromised people. Like, come on, please. So yeah, that's my fail. More measles.
It's a very troubling trend that this is happening.
It's absolutely terrifying to me as someone with a small child who's around a lot of other children all the time.
Yeah. And one of those things about Colorado that's like kind of like, we always had this anti-vax streak, as I like to say, before it was even less cool.
It's like
I sat through an anti-vax bill, and RFK himself came and testified to that committee. And behind me outside were thousands of people shouting. And as I left the committee room, I was spit on. It's just really a weird conversation full of weird people, quite frankly. We never thought it was an option. We didn't think about whether or not someone should be vaccinated against measles and that.
measles.
But people are paranoid now, and we can thank social media for that. Everything is someone out to get you. It's just paranoia. It's too bad because ultimately there are children that died, and they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. And there are other people who are, And I keep reading about, there was an exposure at the airport, there was an exposure at the hospital, there's an exposure at the Shakira concert. So it's like, oh my God, measles in 2025, that's the conversation we're having. But then you look around and you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But.
All right, Alex, what's your fill?
I think the soccer stadium, the narrative in the same week you go out and talk about cutting people's jobs in a city that people don't feel is working for them as well as it should. I think that's a humongous fail. And just another seemingly clueless action by the council. No offense to them, but like, what? Nobody wants that. We want what we had back, if anything. And that is not something that I think the populace in general is very interested in.
Yeah, I think the struggle I have is like folks want something in that empty field.
Yeah.
We've wanted something there since they tore down gates. But is this the right thing? Is this the greater good thing? Is this something, again, can we afford it? I think you're right. Timing is terrible. I was looking at a story about this today, actually, and it was just like the picture of the mayor unveiling the rendering. And I was like, this is just not a good look right now, especially with folks hiring freezes, furloughs. Like, I've got friends in the government. That sucks.
Right.
Well, the council vote, to be fair to them, it was 12-1 or 11-1, I think. And most of them said, I was there. They said, we're going to look at this again in the fall when it's time to actually appropriate the money.
It's not the end all.
It's not a dead done deal. A lot of them are cognizant of that. So we'll revisit this again. And then also the one we should talk about, because she's part of the reason why you're here, Alex, is Councilman Sarah Parody voted no on this deal. And I wonder if, you called her out a little bit on our show. I wonder if you want to take a second to address that situation.
Well, I want to thank her for voting no. I think that's the right vote. I think when I wrote in about the comments of Councilwoman Parody, my reaction was in part that we don't have a relationship. I do have relationships with every other council person, but I've met her, I think, maybe once when she was running, but we don't have a dialogue. And so when somebody comes on and says that they're having an effect on your legislative process when they're not, it's offensive. And so I reacted to that. And I did get some feedback with people telling me I sounded Trumpy and stuff like that. And I've been accused of that before because I'm just a very direct person. And I do think it's a problem when you have elected officials not communicating, but throwing barbs at each other. So the truth of that particular situation was that we had the votes to pass a bill with the relief that we wanted. We just had no path out of appropriations because of the cost of that. So there was no win. There was just kind of a lot of negativity around it. And it's a reason I do not call myself a progressive. I don't like a lot of folks who define themselves progressive. They're very mean, and they're kind of they're flamethrowers and barb throwers. I've even started calling it blue MAGA, because when I'm at the Capitol, it's a lot of FU, it's a lot of middle fingers, it's a lot of icky Trump-like behavior that hardens me in my goal to make sure that they don't succeed.
What's a specific? What's a behavior you saw at the Capitol this session that was blue MAGA to you?
Where do we start? Okay, so
Just one.
I ran a bill that dealt with nuclear energy as a clean resource.
Oh
right?
God, you're speaking Paul's language.
Okay, so I can't.
Energy.
It's controversial, but I come to the thing, and there's an entity that represents Latinos. My name's Alex Valdez, by the way, in case you don't know. And they came in and called me a racist for doing this. And I did on a mic. They accused me of being a racist, and I thought, well, that's really typical of that movement, and that's offensive to me. I know that gets thrown around a lot, but I've never been called a racist before, and so it was highly offensive. And then when I walked out of the room on the tipped wage bill, for instance, there was a person, they were jamming the cell phone in my face and just repeatedly chanting "F you, F you, F you" as children were also in the vicinity. So it's just anger filled. It isn't really hopeful. It isn't attractive. And I reject it. And and I always have. I've never ever been a part of that movement. I am a very strong liberal, and I do believe in progress, but I don't think we're going to make it anymore if that's the way it's going to be attempted. It doesn't work.
Well, this issue with you and Councilman Parody, the debate was over the tip minimum wage, and now the bill that did pass gave responsibility to the municipalities, including Denver, to make a decision about what they want to do. And that debate, I've heard, is coming back near the end of the year. So perhaps Councilman Parody and yourself could come back, and we might have a little bit more of a dialogue about that directly. That could be nice. But that's for a different day. Right now, we're going to end the show with wins of the week. Alex, you want to give us your win of the week?
Yeah, I think there's a project in my neighborhood just a few blocks down. It's a large condominium construction project. I think it's called Upton. They announced their pricing, and their pricing is under $400,000. And I think that's a huge win, because if you're looking to own in Denver and you want to live in a high rise that's brand new for $395,000, I think that's a win. And that's showing that maybe,
how many bedrooms?
I don't know if it would even be called a bedroom. It's probably one of those like beds come out of the wall. But
affordability is relative.
Exactly. And then couple that with another article I read where there was a sale of a building that's good for potentially being converted. Something I really believe. I think we should reform the neighborhood from being maybe as commercially focused to a little more residentially focused. So to me, that's a win, seeing people also believing that if we can't restore people coming back to the office, we can at least bring people back to live, which I think is cool.
That's a tough one. We actually talked to my old boss, Brad Siegel, about this, because residential conversion of office buildings is a lot tougher than it seems.
Oh, yeah.
It's not impossible, but I mean,
expensive.
It's impossible in Denver unfortunately, because of our inclusionary housing. When I've talked to the developers, that kills any profitability of the project right out of the gate for them.
The affordability requirements.
Yeah, they're saying they need to be able to build the project in their own way because it's a pilot, and they won't do it here because of that.
That's a way of saying it's too expensive.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not because of the regulation. That's the implication. But it's not. They're saying it's too expensive because of this, but what they're saying is it's too expensive.
I think what they're saying
is
the
regulations we decided on because we elected these people to council and they voted on them.
I think they're saying I'll just do it elsewhere, which is a problem for us. Because
well,
they are.
The Uber conversation.
I was like, it feels so threatening though. It's like, well, I won't build here. Well, like, but it needs to be affordable. It's
the same as the Uber conversation. It's the same, honestly, as the tax the rich conversation, because these people could live somewhere else too,
Yeah.
And they have the upper hand.
Yeah.
Paul?
My win. Yes. Thank you, Bree. Okay. Boy, having fun today. Okay. I just stumbled on a really great success story this week, and I wanted to talk about it. Pharmacist Artem Muradian gets the win. He founded a Nashville-style hot chicken chain at the worst possible time imaginable, February 2020.
Oh.
And what has he done? He's turned it into a local chain, a local success story. It's called Blazing Bird. He just opened his 6th and 7th locations in the Denver metro area
There's
this
one at
week.
Like 6th and Lincoln, right?
Just opened at 6th and Lincoln, the old Noodles and Company, which is,
that's
a little bit of piece of our history.
We're going to do we should do a whole show about that. I'm so disappointed.
And it's good.
It's great.
The blazing burgers.
You've been.
Oh, I haven't been yet.
You know,
I
I
was
like
there
a
this-
fried chicken sandwich. I mean,
Oof.
good.
can't
It's
beat that.
great, interesting sides. The fried jalapeno chips are good. They've got like interesting menu items, smash burgers. It's very trendy stuff. I thought I had a great time at this place.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to start talking about Blazing Bird as a great local
Also,
chain.
what a great addition to that, just the 6th and Lincoln location, because there's that L&L Hawaiian barbecue spot right over there.
Yeah.
Paul's favorite Chipotle, my favorite Starbucks. You got a little bit of everything.
I wonder if the Denver Health ambulance drivers are heading up Blazing Bird.
Oh, I'm sure they're there all the time. I mean, they said they were at that Chipotle getting iced tea, but
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Hot chicken is in.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure
you see
is.
a Nashville hot chicken everywhere.
Yeah.
Denver, 5 years too late, but it's in.
It's here.
It's here. It got here. Bree, what's your win?
It's my son Montgomery's 4th birthday. Happy birthday, Montgomery. I love you so much. I'm already embarrassing you and you're only turning 4. But it's just like, I got this job. We started this thing when I was 6 months pregnant. This person is now 4 years old. He's a marker of time for the show. It's so wild. But just wanted to tell him happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Montgomery.
That's my win.
Well, great win, Bree. And what a great show. Wow. So much fun. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Olivia Jewel Love, Lizzie Goldsmith, and me, Paul Karolyi. Adam Sage edits the video for YouTube. McKenna Harford writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Abby Madigan runs our social media. Bree Davies is our host. Our music is by Los Mocachetes with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver. And tell Rob Cohen, the owner of the National Women's Soccer League Denver franchise, to please do an interview on the show. Please. I don't know why you're dodging us. Come back on the show and do the interview, please. So you can sign up for the daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. Alex, Bree, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.